Hello, guys. My name is Jessica Brewer, and I'm going to share with you my Learning Innovation Grant and Modern Classroom Project reflection. So I'm sharing my screen with you, and my first slide is who is Miss Brewer as a person? So who am I? I'm currently teaching geometry and algebra 2. The geometry students are mostly sophomores and the algebra 2 students are mostly juniors. I have in the past also taught algebra 1, senior math concepts, ACT math, and college algebra courses. The college algebra courses, I usually just facilitate students who are enrolled in them. I'm not affiliated with a college to teach those courses, but I do help students who are enrolled in those classes here at our high school building. I also coach. I coach our varsity cheerleaders and the middle school and high school academic teams. I have been doing those things my whole life, but mainly the past probably 7 to 10 years. I took a small break in between those, but if I've been teaching, I've been coaching, and I've been teaching for, this makes my 11th year. I also have 5 children of my own: Adriana, Landon, Camille, Braun, and Reagan. And you can see their ages are kind of a wide range there on the screen. My problem of practice for the Learning Innovation Grant was basically apathy. When I applied for this grant, we were in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic. We're still in the middle of that pandemic, but with that pushed aside, the struggle and challenge of the virtual learning versus the in-person learning, I do believe that student apathy is my biggest challenge. There's a lot of math that the students cannot relate to in their real lives, even with real life examples. They still refuse to relate it or relate themselves to a real world problem. Or they've just simply struggled so much in the past, they're automatically turned off to it. So they don't even try. They think they believe that they can't do it because they've never been able to do it. And so they are very apathetic towards math. Why I chose the Learning Innovation and Modern Classroom project is because I believed that it would help me use technology and to differentiate instruction. Looking at the website and looking at the project and all that it had to offer, I thought that it would help me plan and prioritize my instruction and to help students better solve problems. One of the big pushes was that idea of student relationships with producing videos that students could watch. It was kind of a accessibility to the instruction at any time of day. And that opened up the possibility of me having more one-on-one relationships with more students instead of being a sage on the stage all the time in every class period. I did like the idea of the self-paced learning and the differentiation. Especially coming out of a pandemic. Some students participated, some did not in reality. Some students had, excelled with the online learning, but some fell behind. And so I knew that differentiation was going to be even bigger and more involved after what all we had been through. My school also uses an iExcel program. It's an online program. It's really nice, and it's very accommodating to differentiation. So I did like the idea of a self-paced learning through the Modern Classroom Project. And also the Mastery-based learning. I've always been hearing a lot about Mastery-based grading and assessment and accountability, making sure that we are teaching the standards and that the students are mastering the standards. And I felt like I needed to do better at that for my students and for myself. And there was an added bonus of an iPad and an Apple Pen. That was always very nice. So that is why I chose the Learning Innovation Grant and the Modern Classroom Project. Now, where are we at now? So what did I learn? For the mastery-based grading, the idea of mastery checks, did they get it? Did they not get it? Can they move on? Should they revise? And which standards are they tied to? And what should I reteach? And can I go on? So all of those decisions are based on the student's performance on mastery checks. I have used Google Forms in the past, and then that iExcel account again. I have some ACT practice packets that I use a lot. We also have the MAP and CERT testing that my school performs. They usually perform them about 2 or 3 times per year. So I use all of that as mastery checks. And of course, in my class assessments. The idea of revision is a little bit new to me, not really, but I did not purposefully ask students to revise or fix their mistakes. I would go over questions that they missed, but I would not necessarily give them the opportunity to fix them based on any feedback when it comes to a test. And I have started to do that now. So when they take a test, I give them feedback, and then I allow them to make some corrections and reflect on what they did wrong. So they have to tell me something that they changed or something that they did wrong to fix it. Kind of a redo. And the standard-based assessment. I always felt like I tied my assignments and my tests to standards, but I honestly never purposely tried to pinpoint every little standard. I knew what the topic was, I knew what the test was, but I didn't always match it to a literal standard. So I have started doing more of that. My school has also started doing a PLC structure called Plan, Do, Study, Act. And the Modern Classroom project ties into that very well, where we do that backward design of planning the test, then doing the activities with the students to help them prepare for the test, and giving them the test and basically studying what happened. What were the results of our activities? How did they perform on each standard? And so those conversations that I have at the PLC with my other teachers and principal have tied really closely into the modern classroom concepts. And that has been nice to be able to have similar conversations about the same type of structure. I've also learned about a Problem Addict resource. It is an online resource where you can pull questions based on standards. And I've really enjoyed doing that because I always felt like I had to create my own problems for my tests. So that's an added resource if you're interested. That could be very helpful for you in your classes as well. The blended instruction aspect of the modern classroom, what I learned was showing my face on the videos. That was something I had not done before in the past. I also learned about Edpuzzle, where you could stop the recording and insert a question for students to answer. I really liked that aspect and that I had not done before in the past. And the final thing that I have discovered is students being resources for each other, knowing different resources that they can access online. It's online calculators or online formula sheets or videos that I post, PowerPoints that I post on our Google Classroom. I feel like I'm able to reach multiple students multiple ways now that I've been purposeful and strategic about the things that I choose to do and choose to post. The self-paced structure, the one thing that I really liked in the modern classroom course that I did was the lesson clarification. I also had a professional development in the summer called Eureka Math. That's the old Engage New York, if any of you have heard of that. And it was this idea of what must the students do, what could they do, and what should they aspire to do. And that was sort of a built-in differentiation aspect of our lessons and our standards. You have the absolute must-do standards and must-do activities, and must do IXL lessons. But then you have those ones that are sort of in the middle. They could do them, but if they don't do them, it is not going to hurt knowing the standard that bad. And then the ones that push the limit and elevate students, the ones that they can aspire to do. And the lesson clarification of the modern classroom project and my professional development that I had in the summer were basically identical in that aspect. And I really appreciated that. And I learned a lot from that because I always felt like we have to do everything. Every single IXL lesson, every single Eureka math lesson has to be done. Every problem has to be done. And that's not the case. And so I've been better at strategically picking the lessons and the topics and the problems that are done instead of trying to do everything, because that's impossible. And that also led into the idea of the progress tracking, having goal sheets and some suggested skills on IXL for my students. They can track their progress of what they've learned and what they know and what else they need to learn and what else they need to know. The goal sheet specifically is for the MAP test and the CERT test that we do every quarter or every so often. And the students are able to set goals for their scores that they want, and we're able to have conversations about the standards they need to master in order to get those scores that they want. And the same thing goes for the ACT for my Algebra 2 juniors. And that test is also looming in their backgrounds that they want to do well on. So the learning design, I did not feel like I was deficient in that. I'm Google 1 and Google 2 certified, but I did start changing the way that I posted in my Google Classrooms this year, which was with topics. Last year, I would create topics, but the topics were based on the week-to-week class schedule. While we were shut down because of COVID-19, we kind of did this weekly class setting, and my topics were organized by weeks instead of by content aspects. And so one thing I have changed this year is my Google Classrooms are organized in topics, but the topics are actual math concepts. So students are able to see if we're talking about angles or equations or substitution or graphs, and it's very specific and makes more sense than just week 1, week 2, day 1, day 2. And that sort of thing. So that is something that I did learn a little bit more about and have implemented this year. The status this year for my learning innovation application, I said that my ideal classroom is students using resources and problem solving together, checking their work and overcoming obstacles or things that don't make sense by using technology or other available resources. I have a student that has come up with the saying, when in doubt, graph it out. And that has been kind of an overarching theme this year, that if you're in doubt of an equation or if you're in doubt of something, then see if you can graph it and visually see what's happening. The online tools that we've used, there's the Desmos calculators. I've also have used interactive notebooks before. The interactive notebooks are more hands-on in the classroom, and I believe that my students appreciate the balance of the digital versus the hands-on. They're able to highlight and color code and take notes, which a lot of them struggle with. But we lost a lot of that last year during the pandemic. I would give them the resources and notes that they need, but they wouldn't necessarily create and do it themselves. And so we're trying to slowly get back to them being resources for themselves and each other. And then I also use calculators. I have the TI inspired calculators, and there's lots of tips and tricks on those calculators, different buttons and templates that they need to be able to use, especially when they go in to take the ACT. So my sophomores are using Desmos because that's what their end of year test is on. And my juniors are using the calculators because that's what their ACT is on. So I'm trying to just work it all together and balance it out. I do feel like I have made progress towards my ideal classroom where students are using all of those resources to help themselves and each other. So some obstacles that I have experienced still is COVID-19 is still a concern. We had a rough start to the school year this year in Owsley. We were shut down really quick from starting school just because of the spread of the virus and being quarantined and students and teachers and that sort of thing. So we had to incorporate this pod system, which forces a seating arrangement in every class period for these students. So that has been a little unfortunate from what I had hoped to have in my classes based on the Modern Classroom project. I was hoping to have stations and collaboration and students moving in and out and moving in the classroom a little bit more and having certain spaces in the classroom to do certain activities. And that pod system eliminates that possibility for right now. Eventually, hopefully we'll be able to get back to that, but that has been an obstacle and that is still a concern. And also that's still a concern is balancing the in-person learners and the online learners simultaneously. So depending on a class period, if a student is absent, if they are quarantined, or if they are simply part of the virtual academy, sometimes I have to balance the virtual people and sometimes I have to balance the in-person people, and that is still difficult. So that is also still an obstacle. And of course, time. I need at least 3 more of me and about 6 more hours in the day. That's what I would like to have. But that is the only other obstacle that is always there. Overall, I feel that I have learned several strategies of teaching and learning that I'm trying to gradually change and put into practice. Whenever I usually learn something new or a new strategy, I try to implement it in every class for every subject, for every topic. And I'm trying to take it a little more slowly and change one thing at a time and make it good, be productive with it and then mold it out.